So if you enjoyed Matthew in the past and want to hear him, I think that you'll be surprised at the growth that Matthew's made. That's all I can really say is I like it. So he'll be here for a two-part series then. We still probably won't be out of Hebrews, but that's okay. That's another story. So last week I said we're going to finish up chapter 6. Well, I started reading through the last part of it, and I really didn't want to finish it. I want to finish up chapter 6 today. So we're going to finish chapter 6 today. So if you got your Bible, turn to Genesis 12. And I know that's a little confusing, right? But you'll know a little bit more here in a minute. Because before you can understand Hebrews 6, the last part of Hebrews 6, you really need to understand, and you really like this if you like Bible, Genesis 12 through 22. Chapters 12 through 22. So you have to understand that. So we're going to just kind of really fast go through that. But we're going to start in chapter 12. So very early on, right? Very, very early on in the history of man, in fact, just in the very early stages, God creates an entire universe. He speaks it into existence, right? And then he creates man and woman, and we have Adam and Eve. And they seem to mess it all up for us, right? They mess everything up, and they fill the earth up with all these, diabolical men and women. After that, it's their offspring, their kids. So there's 2,000 years before we have this great kid story, right? Before God kills all the earth, or Noah's Ark, right? So he brings Noah's Ark in, and he just wipes everybody out. So the only people that get in there are 8 people. There's 8 people that get in, and there's 8 that come out, and they all settle in this one area on the earth, and they build one city, and then that's what happens. God has them create an ark. He destroys everyone, and they're there. And then through time, they decide that they're going to build this tower, and they're going to build this tower that they're saying, well, if God decides He's going to destroy the earth again, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in this tower, and He can't kill me. So they call this the Tower of Babel. Do you guys remember part of this story? The Tower of Babel. And what you see is that God says, this is just awful. Why are you doing this to me? If I want to kill you, I'll kill you. You can't build a tower and protect yourselves. And that's what He does. So what happens is that at that minute, when they build that tower and they all go up there and they all shake their fist at God, God changes all their languages and all their color. And the color's not in there, but we can see that in the world today. He changes all the languages and all the color and disperses all these people all over the world. And we have all these diverse things that happen now. We have Asia and all these countries that we have, or the United States even. And then, so after that happens, we have God who, he's just fed up with this. He's fed up with man. He's almost killed them twice. He killed them all. After 2,000 years, He killed all the people on the earth except for 8. And then they defy Him and build a tower, and God says, I've almost killed you twice. I'm just tired of that. And he starts talking to a man named Abram, and that's where we're going to pick up. So if you look at Genesis 12 and verse 1, it says, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to a land that I will show you. Now really, think about this. This doesn't sound like a big deal to us. I can remember when I went to college, right? I went to Ohio State. I went an hour away. And I was like, I think my parents just want to pitch me out of there, just go. Like nowadays, when we leave, nobody thinks anything about it. But back in those days, when you left, there was no laws, no rule, no 911, no nothing to protect you, right? You got nothing. And what happens is you've got him walking out into a dark world, and God says, hey, I need you to go, right? And go away from your father's house. You have no protection of all your families around you to protect you. So back then, they're stepping out into a dark, devious world. There's nothing to protect them. And that's what God says to him. And He says, go, Abram, I just want you to go, and I'll tell you where I want you to go. I just want you to go to Canaan. Just go to Canaan and move towards there. So look at the covenant that God makes with him in verse 2. And it says, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him whom you dishonor, who dishonors you, I will curse, and then all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So God's saying He wants to bless. So he says, listen, I've tried to kill you twice. I'm tired of this. Now I just want to bless everyone. I want to bless everyone. He's saying, listen, for the first 12 chapters, I wanted to kill everybody. Now I want to look at blessing the entire earth. And he says, I want you to step out in faith, Abram. I want you to believe in me. I want you to trust me. I just want you to head towards Canaan. And then I'll tell you where to stop. He doesn't even tell him where he's going. So look at verse 4. It says, so Abram went out, and as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took his wife Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all the possessions that they had gathered and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came to the land of Canaan, so God says, I'm going to bless the entire earth through your offspring. And though you, and because of your name, I'm going to bless the earth. And God says, let's go, pack up your stuff, let's go. And that's what happens. So let's flip over to Genesis 15. 15 verse 1. And it says, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abraham said, behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be their heir. So I talked about this with someone before church that I was going to mispronounce that Eliezer word, but I did. So I'm close. I know. I'm working. I'm a work in progress. So here's what just happened. Abraham engages God. He prays to God. He engages him, and he says, you told me that you were going to bless the entire earth with my offspring. But see, there's a problem here. The only person I have in my family is Eliezer. That's it. My cousin. Is that who you're going to bless me with? Is that how this is going to go down? And that's what he asked God. And he says, I don't have a son. You made a promise to me, but what's missing? A boy. I don't have a son. How are you going to do this? You're going to do this with some guy in Damascus who I don't even like, I don't even know? And he says, this is how God answers him. And he says, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir. And the woman who, and he says in verse 5, and he brought him outside and said, look towards heaven and the number of the stars, and if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. So there's a lot of faith there, right? So God comes to him and says, okay, no, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do this. We're not going to do this with your cousin, not with your wife's first, aunts, uncles first, whatever. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do that. And so you're going to have a son, and that's what he promises him. All right, so flip over to chapter 17. And I urge you, if you get a chance, to go back and read 12 through 22. It's a really good story. And what's funny is you'll see how many times Abraham just screws up and God still loves him, and that should make us feel really good. Abraham was 91 years old. So from the moment that he gave him the promise that he would have a son until this time period, it's been 25 years. God makes a promise. 25 years later, nothing. All right, let's go. When Abraham was 91 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. And I may make my covenant between me and you and may multiply you greatly. And then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer, I'm glad he changes this right now, no longer will your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham. Now I can stop messing up. For I have made you the father of multitude of nations, and I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come unto you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. So 91 years old, God repeats the covenant that he made with Abraham. But what's missing? We still don't have an offspring. We don't have a child. We don't have a son. So he's 91, in 99, yeah. Okay. 99. Okay. 99. We'll get to that in verse 17, though. All right. 1750. Now you're lost. I'm just completely lost. I even had a joke there. It's gone now. Forget it. This is tough. Verse 15, chapter 17. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed. So he laughed at God and said to him, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Now he's 100. And Sarah's going to be 91. See, there's my mix. 90 years old and bear a child. So, to Abraham, this is just getting funny, right? He's 100 years old. And it says, shall a child be born to a man who's 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? Listen, we've got an older congregation in here. I understand that, right? And I'm not going to touch on this very much. But 190, okay? That's tough, right? Now, listen, the other thing is I've heard a lot of teachings on this, and I did a lot of study on this, and they like to make to the fact that they lived longer back in those days. But the Bible keeps saying over and over and over again, they were old. And then it says, they were really old. And then it says, they were really, really old. So they're making a big point out of this, and there's even more coming later on where they make other points. And I understand that people lived back then, but listen, 100 years old is 100 years old. Your body breaks down, right? Let's be honest. I'm 47, and I feel like 100.
Well, that makes it more of a miracle.
It does. That was my point. Now, see, she just blew the whole thing. All right, I'm done. No, that's not. You're way off base on this one. I'm just teasing. All right. Oh, man, it's a spirited crowd today. So look in chapter 18. No, I asked her earlier. We were talking. I'm glad she's back. She's been gone for a couple weeks. So she's got to pick on me to make up for it, We prayed her back in. Now we have to pray her back out as she keeps going. So in 18, God comes to Abraham in the form of three men. And God speaks through one, and the other two are angels. Let's just be upfront. And in Genesis 18:9, the Lord speaks to Abraham, and it says, they said to him, where is Sarah your wife? And he said, she is in the tent. And the Lord said, I'm surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son. Now listen to this, you gossipers, right? Listen to this. And Sarah was listening at the tent behind the door. Okay, eavesdropping, gossiping, whatever you want to say. Listen how she gets chastised by God, though. It says, now Abraham and Sarah, wait, I skipped one. And she was listening behind the tent. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. So there it is again. And the way of women had ceased to be with Sarah. That's even worse, right? And then they added a little bit of an explanation. She was advanced in years. So the Bible's trying to tell you that she was old. She was old. And then, the peanut gallery said that was a miracle, right? So for all these preachers that I've heard say that, it's no big deal, it's no big deal. Come on, man. She was old. The Bible says she's old. Let's just keep going.
Just don't get pregnant.
I'm going to let that one go. Verse 12, keep going. So Sarah laughed at herself and said, and this is on film too. That's a bad thing. I got to publish this week. Oh man, I can't edit all this out. You're already, all right. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, I am worn out. I am worn out, and my Lord is old. He's an old man. He's an old geezer, right? And shall I have pleasure? And she meant birth, right? Have a child. And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Here's your gossiper part, right? Why did Sarah laugh? And why did she say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? And at the appointed time I will return to you this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it. She denied saying this to God, right? That's even funnier. And it's saying, I did not laugh. for she was afraid. And I would be afraid too, because I mocked God and laughed at him. And he said, no, but you did laugh. So what God's saying is, nah, you laughed, and it's great. I mean, you just think about the way this whole thing played out, right? She's listening she's listening behind a door, behind a tent, and she hears it, and she just chuckles to herself. She laughs a little bit, and then, God who's there, and he's in three persons, a couple angels and him, and he says, why'd you laugh at me, Sarah? And she goes, I didn't laugh. And he goes, oh, yeah, you did. And she goes, okay. And that was the end of it. That's the end. That's kind of obedience, right? So listen, let's keep moving. 16. And the men set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham went with them to set them on their way. So here you go. You have 25 years. 25 years, and a promise was given before that, right? So after 25 years, they start thinking this is just a laughable idea. It's just funny that God's going to do something. And all right, let's keep going. Let's celebrate with them, right? So Sarah, who's 91 now, which is advanced in age, right? And our boy Abraham, who's now 101 years old. Am I good? 101? We're there. I got that one. I'm good. Thank you. So here we go. 21:1. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord said to Sarah as he promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time at which God had spoken to him. So God showed up, right? And God made this miracle happen. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him and Sarah Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded. So after 25 years, after the promise had been given, God gave them this picture in their mind. He gave them this thought in their heart, the feeling in their heart, and he came to them and he said, finally Isaac's born. And I wish I had time to show you the celebration they had, because he killed like half of his cattle, and they had this great big barbecue. There's only one other one, and that was Solomon, who had a bigger party than that. But it was a great celebration because of this, because God kept his promise. And basically, God comes to him just right after this, right after that, and he says this, do you love me more, or do you love the promise more? And Abraham doesn't know. He doesn't know. This is where things get a little strange, right? So Genesis 22. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here am I. All right, let me clarify something. There's this wild idea that's going around in church today, in evangelical church today, that God doesn't know the future. And it's called open theism. Open theism. And it's very popular today. And what they believe is that God doesn't know anything that's going to happen outside of what's happening present or past. Now, the Bible is very clear, and I've talked about this, that God is outside of time, and he knows he's living in all three stages of time, or whatever God wants to do, right? God is in control. But there's this, it's very popular, and I just want to kind of put that out there. But let me tell you why why this is not true. I want two things. One, that means that God doesn't know the present, right? Because he's testing Abraham's hearts now. He's testing his heart now. So if God doesn't know the future, he wouldn't know the present either. And that doesn't make sense. And then the second thing is that God is testing someone. He's testing Abraham, not because God needs to know. He tests us because Abraham needs to know. He tests you because you need to know. So God knows the future. He knows what's coming. How many of us have ever lived this out? I mean, I've lived this out, but you need to understand that. If you haven't lived it out, it's coming for you. Let me tell you, it's coming for you. God will put you in a place. I'm in it right now, and I don't have any idea why I'm here. But listen, God put me here, and that's where he wanted me. And then I have no idea how he prepared me, but he prepared me for 10 or 12 years to do something like this. But look at Genesis 22:2. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall tell you. So what he just said was, take your son, tie him up, put him on an altar, gut him out, let his blood run all over the altar, and burn him alive. How many of us could do that? I think I would struggle with that. Well, I'm just saying he wanted him to burn him as a sacrifice. He didn't burn him alive. You got to let me finish the story. Yeah, I was implying that's what he wanted him to do. All right, here we go. Woo, tough crowd. I can't back up any farther, can I? I'm just kidding. You're doing fine. It just makes my sermon an hour and a half. I'm just letting you know. All right, here we go. So Abraham rose early in the morning. I'm reading like 75 scriptures today, so we're almost done with most of them. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of the young men with him and his son Isaac, and he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. And on the 3rd day, is that kind of a coincidence? On the 3rd day, he lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. And then Abraham said to the young men, "Stay here with the donkey and the boy, while I'll go over there and worship, and I'll come and get you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac. And he took his hand, the knife and the fire and the knife. And so they both went together. And Isaac said to his father, and this has got to be really rough, "My father," and he said, "Here, my son." And he said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they went, both of them together. And when they came to the place of which God had told them, Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar and on top of the wood. And then Isaac reached his hand out and took the knife to slaughter his son. So just picture this. I told you to picture things in the Bible, right? Picture this. How horrifying a moment is it for both of these people right now? Do you think that Abraham had to overpower this kid? He's probably 115, 112, I don't know, right? And so this kid's probably stronger than him at this point. And he has to overpower him, bind him up, and lay him on an altar. It's just horrifying. And I don't know if I could do that. Verse 11 says, "But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, 'Abraham, Abraham.' And he said, 'Here am I.' And he said, 'Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me.' And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, 'The Lord will provide.' And as it is said that to this day, and on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time." So this is where it all ties together. The next few verses where we'd read all that to get to this. But verse 16. And this is God. He says, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of your enemies." So God makes a promise in Genesis 12, and it takes 25 years to be fulfilled. And as it's fulfilled, then God says, "Do you love me more than the promise?" One man, Abraham. And Abraham says, "No, you're enough. You are enough." And God says this, "I swear by myself that what I have promised you will come true." Now, with all this in your head and everything that we talked about, we're going to go to Hebrews 6. We'll finish it up. In the book of Hebrews, it was written to a group of men and women who are just totally struggling people. And this is our 10th week in the book of Hebrews. We're halfway through right now. And we've tried to walk through it verse by verse. And if you've been here at all, this is what we're saying often. This is what God's saying in through these first 6 chapters. He's saying, "Come on now, let's make it here. Let's hold fast here. Let's not neglect our salvation. Let's run here to me. Let's cling. Let's find rest in me." And then you've got this group of people who are really struggling and having a difficult time with the promise, holding fast to the promises of God. So God's going to reference this story that we just talked about and just read. And here's where it ties in. So look at Hebrews 6:13. And it says, For God made a promise to Abraham. So we already know what the promise is. They would have a son, and through that son, the whole earth will be blessed. And since he had no one greater to swear, he swore by himself. Surely I will bless you and multiply you. So now, we've read this word for word, and we'll read it word for word in a second, but listen. Men swear by things greater than themselves. You know, one of the most popular things today is, I'm not going to go into the bad ones, but I swear by my mother's grave, right? So if they're lying, their mother's grave is desiccated, right? Or I swear by this, or I swear by that. They don't swear by something that's not greater. They don't swear by something that's lesser. They swear by something that's greater than them. I hope that your mother would be greater than them. So, but God says, I'm God. And because there's nothing greater than me, I'm going to swear by myself. And by me swearing by myself, if I'm lying, let me not be God. That's what he's saying. I swear by myself. And that's what he does to Abraham. So look at verse 15. And it says, and thus Abraham, having patiently waited, obtained the promise. For people swear by something greater than themselves, and in all their disputes, an oath is final for confirmation. Now, we've kind of got a cultural kind of chasm here, right, if we think about this. And that's because we really don't understand this whole text. But what he's referring to is the Old Testament. And what they're saying is, and what he's referring back to is that in the Old Testament, when they swore by something, if they swore by their family, guess who got killed if they were lying? Not them, their family. And not just mom, dad, everybody. They wiped them all out because they lied. So when they made an oath, it's huge. It's, you know, it's just when you swear by your family, and then that's what it meant. Your family. It's not you. So you're putting your family's life on the line. Unless you're, you know, just kind of absolutely evil or wicked or ridiculous, and you're lying about it. You know, it's just something you don't do. You're telling the truth. But he's saying that this is what would end the argument. This is what ends it. So look at Hebrews 6:17. It said, when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of his purpose, he guaranteed it with an oath. So now, the heirs of the promise in here, that's us. We're the heirs. Because we're the offspring of Abraham, right? We're the offspring. So think about how this works. And here's what it looks like. You have a promise that was made to Abraham, right? And Abraham had a son who was Isaac. And Isaac had a son who was Jacob. And then on down the line you have King David. And then on down the line in that same lineage you had Mary, the Virgin Mary. And then you have Jesus. Good answer. Good answer. We're catching on. So what he wants to show us is this, is the unchangeableness of God. That it's God's purpose, and he inserted it with an oath. He swore upon himself that the world might be blessed through our salvation. And he's not changed his mind. He's not changed his plan. He's not changed the purpose of it. It's unchangeable. So look at verse 18. So by two unchangeable things in which it was impossible for God to lie. Keep that in your mind. Impossible for God to lie. We who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. And who's the hope? That's Jesus, right? For we have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place beyond the curtain. And that what they're referring to, if you think about the Holy of Holies, there was a place where they'd come in and they would sacrifice, and then behind that, a priest would go in and sacrifice. And he's lifted that curtain. We're allowed, because nobody was allowed in there but a priest. And he had to be basically a monk. He couldn't, a sinless man who walked in. He was clean. He repented. He had to take sacrifices in with him, and that's what he did. And we're anchored now inside that curtain, inside the Holy of Holies, because of Jesus. And I know this is tough, but just stay with me because it comes together. Hebrews 20, look at verse 20. It says, where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf, having become a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And I know a lot of you are looking for Melchizedek stuff. We'll get that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, let me just kind of wrap this up and bring it all together. So listen, here at Apex, we're kind of an odd place, right? We're not a very big group. We're a bunch of different people from different areas. I mean, I'm from the west end of Marion, born and raised there, and now I live in Prospect. And everybody here is different. We all come from different areas of there, right? And when I came here 6.5 years ago, and I came here when we're still had a white curtain up behind, and Ryan was preaching. And if you were here in the beginning, you remember that I was here, and I came for wrong reasons. I get that, but this place was really gritty, man. There was probably about 70 people there. They had 3 or 4 services they were trying to go through, and if you went to certain ones, there'd be 3 people there, right? You know, just Ryan, 2 people that were ushering, and 1 guy, right? That's it. But listen, I have been pleading with God for the last few months to send us people to disciple, right? I've been pleading with God to do that. And I've been saying, send us people church people, right? And that's probably the wrong way to say it, but send us people who know the Bible, right? Send us people who have an ESV when I open it up. So when I open my ESV, they're reading the ESV. And don't get offended. I told you the NIV is my pocket. I got it down on my hip. It's down there. It's just my little Bible. But listen, send us some, you know, I know that we've went through some really dark stuff here, and I don't want to bring it up. And I know that the leadership here has just made it real tough for everybody here. And I know what we've become is really just a de-churched people. We stuck together as a de-churched people. And what I mean by that is just we're just a small group of people who have been beaten up by church. And we've been killed by church. Church, not church body, church. And the religious things that are being done. And I think what God is, he's leading us into this, and I've seen this for the last couple months. He's leading us into something different. But listen, you have to get involved before this goes any farther. You have to be involved. And a lot of you are, but a lot of you aren't. And maybe you physically can't, but maybe you know the Bible. Maybe you can talk to somebody and teach them or something. Or maybe you could just read through a scripture with somebody. But you got to get involved. It doesn't work if you don't get involved. And I think God's leading us there. And I know that some of us are really broke, we're hurting, and we're lonely people. I know that. And I know that the leadership here has just killed us. But we're trying to change that. And I think I've seen God bless so much, you just don't understand the blessings that we see behind us. And you know, I'll be honest with you, I was praying, just send me somebody healthy. Send me somebody that's only got 1 eye and a half a Bible. I don't care. Send me people to help these people that they can get through. But listen, I think that you guys are those people. I think that you are those people. That's the point that I missed. I think that God did send the people here. This group has been here forever. We've been here forever. I think that you are those people, and I just want you to get involved. Listen, don't do this one-time thing or 2 and then quit. Get involved. Even just showing up and just sitting there, that's you being involved. Giving your advice. You know, here's the thing. I don't know, and I'm 1 year in, and I don't know if we call this church a place of healing. But listen to me. I think, I know we hope for it. We hope for it. And I think we're really close to being a place of healing. But I know that we hope for it. And I know that we pray for it. And I know the leadership of this church prays for healing for this church. But I got to be honest, right? Is it just me? Or has all this time that we've been spending here, doesn't it seem like the promises of God are taking forever? That they're slow. I mean, that's what it seems like to me, that the promises of God are slow. And, you know, the healing and the fullness and the intimacy that we have, that it seems like it just takes, it's slow. Now, I'm going to explain it here in just a second. I think what it is is that historically, church has helped us, or it hasn't helped us a lot, because what you see is this one guy that comes in, and he's like this super strong, super now. I talked about him a couple weeks ago. He's floating through he floats in. He doesn't even touch the ground, and everybody that he looks at gets saved. And last week he learned the New Testament by heart, and he can quote it, everything word for word. And we're looking for that, and it's not going to happen, because what I learned growing up in church is that guy 2 years later is gone. He's gone. He doesn't even care anymore, because he got to what he thought was a pinnacle of church, and then he jumped off a ledge. It wasn't in his heart. It was in his head. I mean, see, when we see people like that, we kind of look at God, and we look at us and we go, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? That's what I thought. My story doesn't have anything to do with that. I don't float or do anything. I don't have anything like that. And we just begin to think that we're broken. And we're thinking, well, maybe this doesn't work for us. But listen, God is healing this church. Or how about this one? We have this secret sin, and we finally win victory over the secret sin. You guys have you ever been through this? We got something that you're hiding, and it's one of those things that just beats the trash out of you all the time. All the time, it just beats the trash out of you, and you just can't never get victory. And then finally, God delivers you. You think God delivers you through something, and you're thinking, never again am I going to do this. Never again. You're just, you let go of it, and then all of a sudden you hear, that sin's knocking again. Knocking. I'd knock on there, but you never hear it. So all of a sudden it's knocking again, and maybe we're good for 6, 7 weeks, 6, 7 months, and then out of nowhere it just keeps getting louder and louder and louder. Or how about when you have all this bitterness and anger and rage for somebody, and you finally go, oh, I forgive you. I forgive you. And then all of a sudden that clown, they do something stupid again. And I hate you now. Why'd you do that again? Oh, I can't do that. I got to let go of that. I got to let go of that. I hate them. I hate them. I mean, is it just me, or the promises of God just seem like they're slow? They're slow. I mean, that's what we were taught in Sunday school, right? That they're going to happen just like this. I know I was. We were taught in Sunday school like that. I tried to get my head around 25 years. 25 years that God made a promise, and nothing happened. And could I endure for 25 years? 25 years. I mean, this whole culture we have here is just built on speed. We want everything right now, right? I mean, the whole speed back then, a camel probably went top 10 miles an hour, right? Now you're in the left lane doing 60 and somebody shoots your head off, right? It's true. They'll do that. We want it fixed right now. We want it now. If we don't get it, then we're all angry and upset. If it requires me cleaning me, or it requires me being honest, or if it requires me saying that I'm the smuck that I am, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not interested. I don't want it. Is it just me, or the promise of healing and fullness and wholeness and rest? They just keep coming slower than we were promised. But listen, it's not by God. It's by you and others. See, there's these things in my life that I desperately want to take to the grave. I mean, I desperately don't want them to keep coming back up and appearing in my daughter's life and in future lives of people around me. And I just keep laying those things at Christ's feet. Just keep laying them down there. Even though they come back up, and even though I sin again, I keep going to my knees. And if you want me on my knees, I'll go on my knees. And it's just amazingly how quickly they just come back and they whisper. They're there again. They're there again. Are you with me? Do you understand? I mean, they're there. But God's saying, those promises, are we the one that's seeing them slow? Because in the text, listen, Abraham was absolutely obedient to God. So what we have in here today is we have, two kinds of people. And one, what I'm going to say is for you, and one is not. And first I'm going to talk about the people that's not. So Abraham was absolutely obedient. He was absolutely obedient. And if you come in here week after week and you hear us talk about wholeness and healing and right standing with God and all those things, and you have not moved in any obedience at all, I'm not talking to you tonight. I'm not talking to you. But if you're in here and you're saying, let's go. Let me stand up here and act like a fool. Let me be that fool. Let me step out in faith, God, because you gave me the faith. I mean, think about Abraham when he went and had that conversation with his dad. Think about the time period he was in, how dark everything was around. And then he steps out with his dad and he says, Dad, hey, I'm leaving. You ever had this conversation with your parents? Maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't. God told me to do it, so I'm walking out. I'm leaving. I'm gone. I'm going to do this. I'm going to step out in faith with God. I don't think most of the parents that I know of would like that. So if you're in here tonight and you've got all this secret junk and you have not, we plead with you. I've been pleading with you every week during this series. If you don't know what to do, then you got to get help. You got to get into a small group. You got to find somebody who understands this. Maybe it's a biblical counselor. I don't know. I mean, we pleaded with you to be honest with your junk. We're a family here. A family here. But if you're going, I don't know why I'm not healing. I mean, and you're right. The promises of God are slow. No, you're slow. You're slow. It's not God. And God's probably standing there going, come on, let's get out of here. Let's get out of this junk. I got something better for you over here. I got some honey over here. I got something better. And we just keep saying no. He's saying, let me heal you. Come into this. But if you're here tonight and you're on the other side, he's saying, I haven't forgot you. Don't give up. Don't give up. I know there's been years since I've made these, and I know there's been years that you've asked for things. I know there's been years that you've been praying for somebody in your life to be saved. I know that you've been praying and praying. Don't give up. I have not forgotten my promises. Don't give up. I know it's dark today. I know it's not what you want, but don't give up. And I know your dark side is louder and it's speaking louder and louder, but don't give up. I haven't forgotten you. And the hope is that you understand that God said, I cannot lie. And he promised us salvation, healing, reconciliation, restoration, and the hope which is Jesus, that in the end that God will anchor us in faith, anchor our soul, that no matter how dark it gets, no matter how dreary you think it is, that he's still there, no matter how much we get tossed about. I know what we've got in here, man. I do. I know that some of you are just barely hanging on today. I know you are. And I know that some of you live week to week. And maybe you come in here and you hear us sing, and you sing, and you get some energy, and you get some things in there, and then you walk out of here and you go into a really dark place, a really tough situation. And my prayer is that when you get in your car today, that you grab a hold of that steering wheel and maybe you'll hear enough out of Abraham and the promises of God by his own name that he won't put something in front of you that you can't handle, because he's there with you to handle it for you. And that you'll understand that every morning brings new mercies. Every morning brings new mercies. And he doesn't ask you to live for a year. He doesn't say, live this year, live this year. He gives you the strength for today. He asks you to live one day at a time. And he's not going to abandon you. And he's just saying, grab a hold of that steering wheel, and he's saying, just breathe. Just let it out. I mean, aren't you tired of chasing things and running around? Aren't you tired of that? I mean, he's not going to forget. He's not going to abandon us. And he's not going to leave you to your own plan, because it's all about his plan. And I would pray that hope would be restored in you if it's not there. I know you might be hanging on by a thread, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know what hurt is in your heart. I don't. And I don't know what thing keeps haunting you, or what thing's holding you back from just letting Christ have everything. And I don't know what it is you're being obedient about or disobedient about. I don't know. But I know that we have this great promise that goes well beyond us, and historically goes deeper and longer than any of us can fathom. And I promise you, listen to Ephesians 3, and it says this, 3:10, so that through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might be known to the rulers and authorities in heavenly places. The church being us. It's our healing, our wholeness, and the process that it takes to get there sometimes. And that 25 years it may take that God leads you through that is because that's what he wanted to test you with, or that's what he wanted you to see. And I know that we have, some of us are in here and we just haven't got to that place where we want to let go of things. And my prayer is that you just get wrung out, man. You just have enough with it. You just had enough of that sin and you let go of it. I pray that the hope would be restored in you. And I know that sometimes we think we can outrun that hope. We can outrun Jesus, or we've outsinned Jesus. I know that sometimes God's pace or his timing is not ours. And I have struggled with that myself. And I know that we just want to snap our fingers and have this gone or that gone, or this person, be what we want them to be, but they got to be what God wants them to be. All right, let's pray. Father, I thank you for these men and women, and I pray tonight or today that unbelievable weight of your grace would fall on each and every one of them, Lord. I pray for the brothers and sisters in here that feel overwhelmed by just the baggage that's there and their sins, Lord. I pray that you would restore their hope in you, Jesus, and that the story of Abraham, who waited 25 years, would just encourage us that even in this moment, no matter how long it's been, no how long we've been asking, or how long we've been praying to you, that you have not forgotten about us. You have not abandoned us, and that you just deeply love us, and that you who began this thing and promised will be faithful to complete it. And so I pray that all of us, like Abraham, would be patient and obtain the promise, Lord. I pray that you would encourage the people in here today that this Father, that they would just breathe out and know that you have not forgotten them. In Jesus' name.
I come to you, for I know you satisfy. I am empty, but I know your love does not run dry. So I wait for you. So I wait for you. I'm falling on my knees, offering all of me. Jesus, you're all this and I run to you, for your arms are open